Ever wondered how a country as huge and diverse as Pakistan is actually governed on the ground level? Well, a huge part of the answer lies in its provincial assemblies. You can think of them as the engines of regional government, and today we're going to break down exactly what they are, who gets to be a member, and why they are so important to the way the country works.
So here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll get into what these assemblies actually are. Then, we'll look at who can become a member. The rules are pretty interesting. We'll take a snapshot of the current landscape, glance back at a bit of history, and finally wrap up with why all of this really matters. All right, so first things first, what exactly is a provincial assembly?
Okay, so at its heart, a provincial assembly is a legislative body. That's just a formal way of saying it's a group of people whose main job is to make laws for their specific province or region. And you'll see the word unicameral here. All that means is that there's just one single group or chamber making the decisions. It's a more direct system.
And the people who sit in these assemblies, they're called Members of the Provincial Assembly, or MPAs for short. They're elected directly by the people in their local area, and they serve a 5-year term. Their whole job is to be the voice of their community. So this leads to a really fascinating question. Who can actually become an MPA? Because, it's not quite as simple as just throwing your hat in the ring.
The rules are laid out black and white, right in Pakistan's constitution, and that's a big deal. It means these aren't just guidelines or suggestions, they are the absolute law of the land for anyone who wants to hold one of these offices.
Okay, so let's start with the basics, the stuff you'd probably expect. You have to be a Pakistani citizen, you've got to be at least 25 years old, and of course, you need to be a registered voter. Pretty standard, right?
But here's where it gets really interesting, and it's what makes this system so unique. The Constitution doesn't just stop at logistics. It actually gets into character traits. It says a member must be sagacious, which means wise and having good judgment, as well as righteous, honest, and non-profligate, meaning not wasteful. So we're talking about a constitutional standard for integrity and public trust. And it gets even more specific, creating these parallel character requirements that depend on a candidate's faith. For a Muslim candidate, they need to have a good grasp of Islamic teachings and a reputation for following them. For a non-Muslim candidate, the parallel requirement is framed as having a good moral reputation. It's just a fascinating window into the values that are embedded right into the country's legal and political framework.
Okay, so we've looked at the rulebook. Now let's zoom out and see how this all plays out in the real world by taking a look at the current assemblies across Pakistan today.
This chart is great because it lays it all out so clearly. You can see right away the huge difference in size. You've got the relatively small assembly in Gilgit-Baltistan with just 33 seats, and then you have the absolute powerhouse of Punjab with 371 seats. That just shows you the massive population differences between regions. And, of course, it gives us a quick look at the political landscape with different parties in power in different parts of the country.
And if you add up all those seats from all the assemblies, you get this number, 835. That's 835 people across the entire country elected to represent their local communities at the provincial level. It's a simple number, but it really gives you a sense of the scale of this whole layer of government. Now, the political map we see today, well, it wasn't always this way. Let's take a quick but really important look back in time at a couple of assemblies that no longer exist. History has completely reshaped Pakistan's political structure. The East Bengal Provincial Assembly, for example, existed from 1947 until 1971, when the war led to the creation of Bangladesh. And then there was the West Pakistan Provincial Assembly, which was dissolved in 1970, when the one-unit policy, which it merged all the western provinces into a single unit, was ended. It's a powerful reminder that these political structures aren't set in stone. They evolve right along with the nation itself. So we've covered the what, the who, and the where, but that brings us to the biggest question of all. Why should we care? Why do these assemblies actually matter so much?
Well, they are the absolute bedrock of local democracy. These assemblies are where laws get made about things that affect your daily life: education, local policing, healthcare, you name it. They're the ones who approve provincial budgets, deciding how our tax money gets spent on the ground. They form the provincial governments, they hold those leaders accountable, and maybe most importantly, they act as that critical link between local communities and the national government in Islamabad. They make sure local voices get heard. And that brings us to our final thought for today. We've seen that Pakistan's constitution doesn't just ask for qualified leaders, it specifically asks for leaders of good character, people who are honest, righteous, and wise.
So that leaves us with a pretty big question to think about. How does the character of leadership at this local level, a character shaped by these very unique constitutional roles, ultimately influence the future of an entire nation?